Hello and welcome to Two Whole People. I'm your co-host Connor.
And I'm Kevin.
Well, thanks for coming back on with me, Kevin.
You're welcome. I had a very busy schedule this Saturday.
So for those of you who aren't aware, this is a show where we normally talk about tech stuff, but I think at some point we might just talk about whatever we want. It all depends on how we feel. But today we're going to continue along the tech type of thinking, the tech thinking, and we're going to talk about our time back in college, specifically the best course that we took that best applies to our current job, and then the course that we took in college that doesn't apply at all to our current job.
Yeah.
So we thought that might be a tiny bit interesting to talk about and to talk through what was not a waste of time in college, based on what we do now, and then what was a complete waste of time in college.
Yeah. I love talking about wasting money. It's great.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about college.
It's the best.
Man, the fee per course is pretty steep nowadays.
Yeah. From what I hear.
Yeah, well, yeah, from what we experienced. Brutal. But yeah, so and again, we took the computer science the computer science bachelor's program at the Grand Canyon U in the state of Arizona. So that's the course that we took. We got there in 2014, right?
Yeah.
That was our first
2014
year.
and to 2018.
2018. Yep. Okay. So to kick it off, so what I currently do, just so you guys have the context about what could actually be helpful for me in my current job, I'm a data engineer. That's probably what would best describe my role, although I do a couple other things as well. And what that primarily entails is I work on the database in the back end that is the transactional side of the company, where when a customer comes in and they use the front end or the website, or they go in, let's see, how detailed will I get about my current job? Let's just say I work on the databases in the back end. And maybe in the future video, I'll go into more depth about what my specific job actually is. But for now, I'm a data engineer, and I work with databases and data in general. So
He engineers data.
yeah. So what course was most helpful for me, considering what I currently do on the job each day? Well, the principles of sociology, I think, was perhaps
definitely the best course that was taken by us. 100%.
I took that course when I was a freshman, and sociology helped me to understand people. No, that was a terrible course. It was awful. I don't know why we had to take it. Did you have to take that one, or?
I did not.
Okay, so then what tech did you take? Like a psychology or something? What did you do?
I took something in high school. I don't remember which course it was. I took an AP course, and I didn't have to take either of those classes.
Well, lucky man.
So get wrecked.
Yeah. So that was a joke. A very funny joke. But the principles of sociology didn't really help me out that much in my data engineering job. But no, the best course that did that was probably the principles of database design. And that was a lecture and a lab course that I took at the same time.
That's a great course.
And that probably makes sense too.
1DP.
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm speaking Gen Z. Did you hear that?
Ooh, that's rough. But yeah, so that probably makes a lot of sense. That the course that had to do with designing a database, that's the course that would be most helpful to me as a data engineer. So that makes sense to, I'm sure, a lot of people. But I mean, it's just data modeling, relational databases, SQL Server, MySQL, document stores. We just learned about all of that stuff, and like that's the stuff I need to use every day on the job, like every day, every hour. That's all the stuff that I'm in all of the time. Thinking about relations between tables, how to flesh out a table in a way that makes the most sense for what the business needs. It's that class, and it wasn't really close to the hardest class I took, and it wasn't really close to the simplest class I took. It was just kind of in the middle. But in terms of the stuff I learned in the class, that's just what I do every day. The databases and such.
Yes, and learning SQL. I think that is our first official like SQL course.
That's a huge point. That was the first time that we wrote a select statement with a from clause and a where clause. Like that was the first time that we did any of that. And I think if you go onto LinkedIn and Indeed, I think SQL is still I think it might be the highest requested language for jobs. Still.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because I mean, everybody uses it. Like even like NoSQL databases have SQL interpreters in them. Like everybody uses it.
Yeah.
Like we use it a lot, but we have a MySQL database, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So that was a big one. Learned a whole bunch of stuff that I still use every day. So that was not a waste of time. And then again, that was the principles of database design lecture and lab. And I did actually like the lab part. In a lot of the courses that we took, I appreciated when there was a lab associated with the course. Because a lot of the computer science courses that we took that were just primarily about the theory, those were cool. And it was fun to learn the theory behind all of the stuff that we were trying to learn as a part of the program. But whenever there was a lab associated with the theoretical courses, I thought that always helped me more to better understand all of the content. And I always feel like the theory made sense to me after I actually began to do the lab. It was like, oh, this, of course. But I like the labs a lot. What was your best course that best applies to your job? What is your job?
So I think what would best be described as the technical part of my job is senior software engineer. So I write code all day on a web-based application. I do some data engineering too, not nearly as much as Connor does, but I do some because we don't have any data engineers. So I do it. It's great. It's a fun time. So I don't touch as much of the data on a daily basis. So most of what I do is just pure software development. And the courses that I found to be the best, and there's two of them, was Introduction to Computer Science. So the very first computer science course that we took, and then Algorithms and Data Structures. And we took these, I believe, like a semester apart. So it was like CST 110, which is introduction, and then CST 200. So it was like the semester after each other. So they just flowed really well together in my brain. But it was the first time that I'd ever written code in my life was in the introduction course. And then Algorithms and Data Structures was the first time I touched object-oriented programming. So that really helped. Actually, is that true? That might not be true.
I think it was because we had a class that was all object-oriented, CSD 210, which I think was after that.
That would make sense. Yeah. Okay. So I was right.
I think that was the first one where we actually wrote a class and began to think in that kind of like an abstract way of, okay, well, this is an object, but how do I make the scaffolding for what the object could be, and then make a bunch of different versions of that type of object.
That's the one where you also learned a bunch about arrays and all the different things, all the different strategic algorithms that developers use to solve problems.
Dijkstra's.
Dijkstra's.
And, if you want to solve a map or whatever.
Yeah, Dijkstra's. You remember that?
Yeah, with nodes and vertexes. Dijkstra's algorithm.
I think that was also the first time I learned about graph databases and traversing a graph. And that social network, which I love that stuff. I love it so much. So graph theory, that was the first time I learned any graph theory, and it made algorithms make so much sense. So if you want to learn more about graph theory, pop a comment or something down below, and we could talk a little bit more about it, because I can nerd out about it forever.
Yeah, and that one too, CST 200, which is the data structures course. The project in which we had to solve a maze or whatever. I think that was in that one.
Yeah, that was the maze project. Yeah.
That was when, and this was I think during the sophomore year, right?
First semester of our sophomore year. Yeah.
Yeah, that was when a lot of the classes that we took and a lot of the projects that we began to take, they were all kind of like a puzzle that we had to solve, and I don't know, coding became a lot more fun at that point. The first year it was a lot like, here's how you print a string and here's how you add stuff.
Oh yeah.
And here's the basic, here's how to define a list, and here's how to.
Towards the tail end of CST 110, did you guys have to do? Because I know we didn't take the same CST 110 course. We didn't take it together.
We did not. They're very different.
Did you guys have to do the solitaire project?
I can't remember.
So when I was in it, our final project, our final was we had to write a text-based version of Solitaire.
Maybe.
And that was that was the point at which I decided I'm not going to switch my major. I'm going to stick with it because I actually figured out how to do it. So if you're looking for a project to test your programming abilities and something that will help you get some good practice, I would suggest trying to write a text-based version of Solitaire in Python.
Yeah, the whole class was in Python, right?
Yeah, that whole class. And then I believe CST 200 was our first class that
C++.
went... Well, we did Python first, and then we did C++.
Yeah. Which, if you're going to learn those, maybe...
Don't learn C++.
Well... Or C++ first and then Python? I don't know, because...
Well, if you're going to learn... Because isn't Python written in C? I believe the interpreter is written in C.
In terms of in Python, you don't have to define the data types of anything. And that's in Python.
You don't have to declare variables.
It was just very annoying for me to go from Python, which you basically just write a statement.
You write English on a page. Just indented.
Yeah. And then to go to C++, where it's why do I have to define that this is an integer? I don't care. Yeah. It should just know that. And there are positives.
And then defining structs and all of the nonsense that you have to do to just define one thing is.
Yeah, there's just more code involved.
It's a lot,
to do
but
the
it's
same
so
thing
much
Python.
faster.
Yeah. No, I'm not
it's
saying
a compiled
that,
language.
Yeah, I'm not at all saying that C or C++ is bad or anything, or that it's better or worse than Python. I'm just saying that if you're going to learn for the first time how to write,
if you're planning on learning both of those languages, I think you learn the more learn the compiled language first, like C++ or C, and then learn an interpreted language like Python.
Yeah, because
R.
At that point it's just a breath of fresh air. You're like, oh, I can do the same thing with less code. It's just so nice.
You appreciate it way more, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So, and then learn assembly never, but we'll get there.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, at some point. But yeah, okay. So, worst courses.
Speaking of worst courses.
Wastes of time.
Speaking of terrible things that we did in college.
$5,000 down the drain or more. I can't even remember. But just an unbelievable amount of money gone. Of course, you need these courses to technically get the bachelor's degree. So they're not
I do not think that that's true. I think that these were invented simply to torture us.
But what I'm saying is I couldn't have actually gotten the piece of paper without going through these courses. True. Okay, so... For me, I have two here. The first one I want to talk about is we had to take a chemistry class, a physics class, and a biology class.
I didn't have to take biology because I'm smart and took AP biology in high school.
All right.
So,
all right,
just wanted to wreck Connor real quick.
Giant IQ brain over here.
Yep. 9,000 IQ.
You are wearing the glasses, and I'm not. I get it. You're the smarty.
Yeah, they give you this when you graduate. From college, by the way, they give you
a pair. Okay, so I don't
give you a pair of glasses. Yeah.
Okay.
Connor didn't graduate.
So chemistry. So chemistry, out of those three, the physics, biology, and chemistry, was just the one I hated the most. So that's why I have it on here. And in terms of a class that I took that did not apply at all to what I currently do,
Yeah.
all of the science ones that I took, like,
know,
you know, and
physics
I
was-
get, because like if you pursue biology or physics or chemistry, I know you have to kind of take a couple of the other courses in the other fields to just get a general idea. But those three subjects are more tightly linked than computer science is to them.
Yeah.
Like, who cares about bio?
Who cares about balancing those stupid equation things?
Well, I
in
care about the
chemistry?
opposite of biology. I don't like. I want to pursue a field in which I don't have to worry about what goes on inside of people. It's just, the,
machine, yeah.
the software. Yeah, but you know, I guess I kind of get it because it's in the STEM family, I guess. So you have to kind of branch out and.
Yeah, I think you have to take those courses to get a bachelor's of science,
Yeah.
which
I don't know.
is
Yeah,
a garbage
sure.
rule that we should
makes-
change as a society.
It kind of makes sense.
Chemistry was the worst course. I hated it. I hated it so much.
Well,
Also, mine was at 7 a.m., so that could have something to do with it.
Mine was it also. Yeah. So never do that.
Yeah,
Especially,
never take a hard course like that at 7 a.m. because you won't show up. Well, maybe you will. Maybe you're a good person, but I didn't show up.
Has
Ever.
nothing to do with being a good person. It has to do with sleep. Sleep is. But yeah, so I put that down one. I mean, that one's very obvious though as to why it does not apply at all to what I currently do. I've never had to balance.
You
one
don't
of those
do
equations.
mixture problems and
No.
talk about moles or avocados.
I mean, when I go to my dermatologist,
You talk about moles all the time?
occasionally talk about.
That's biology. See, it's all coming around. It's
Hey,
all coming
you all
around.
come here for comedy. That's
That's why you're here. Because we're the funniest people on the internet.
all right. So aside from the obvious course that has nothing to do with what I do now and is a waste of time, Introduction to Computer Architecture, and that was the assembly course.
Yes.
Right?
We learned MIPS 32 assembly,
Okay.
which is, I'm pretty sure it's a made up version of assembly. It's not even real. It is like literally like a simulated version of assembly.
So for
It's not
those
for-
of you
yeah.
who don't know what assembly is, to get a job in the real world, you don't have to ever know that.
Just
But,
don't do it.
I mean, it is kind of interesting, but again, in terms of what is a useful skill or knowledge for me to have for what I do on the job, this is completely pointless. It was kind of interesting to learn about what the pioneers of tech had to deal with before they came up with like C.
Remember when they were like, when our professor was telling us how he used to code and he had all these
a
like
punch
stacked
card?
punch cards. I was like, I don't care.
Yeah, but they did that so we don't have to. That's so like, why would we stomp all over the sacrifices that the pioneers in the tech space made by going back and having to learn assembly ourselves? It's like they all did that in the past so that we don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly.
But yeah, so for those of you who don't know, it's like, well, first off, it's like a computer is basically a rock that we tricked into thinking. And the first way it thought was just binary ones and zeros.
So it's a rock.
And then like to manipulate the arrays of ones and zeros, and I'm going to get a lot of this wrong, but it's like one of the first languages that was ever made was assembly. And it's just, you have to manage everything.
Can't you like not subtract in assembly? Because there's some rule that you can't subtract, so you have to like add something.
Like
it's a whole deal, and it sucks. It's basically
you have to manipulate like everything that goes on in the background.
you can write a loop though. I remember writing loops.
We did write a loop, but
I remember writing
so
loops.
like a Python script to write a for loop is like, you can do that in like four lines or something, or even like one line if you do it all in one line. But like that can be like 4 lines of code. In assembly, it was like 100 or something. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was this massive file for just like, I want to loop through and like make a print statement print out 10 times.
Didn't you have to loop through bytes? in assembly.
It was something disgusting. All I know is that
I feel like that was true, but I could be wrong.
The best thing about that course is it made me appreciate and love.
Obviously, we learned a ton in this because we clearly have no idea what happened.
Well, even while we were going through it, we're like, we don't need to know any of this
I'd
to
rather
get any real world job. And there are some jobs.
I'm sure
I would have to
there-
look them
yeah.
up where like the need of the business is to have the most efficient thing possible.
Fastest.
And then, if you want to do that, then you write an assembly. But wasn't a Roller Coaster Tycoon written in assembly? I'm going to look this up. We're going to have our first look up here on the podcast.
Please type in. I loved Roller Coaster Tycoon, by the way. One of my favorite games of all time.
Roller Coaster Tycoon was written by one guy.
Impressive, number one.
In assembly.
Is that for real?
I think it is.
The most patient programmer in the world.
Oh my god. Okay, well, we're just going to move on from there.
Yeah.
My god.
That man it's impressive. That's impressive.
It's disgusting.
Right. So yeah, after that whole deal, we have my worst course of things that don't apply.
Waste of time.
Yeah, just a pure waste of time. And I think that the reason that I hated this specific course so much was because I had so many other courses that year that I was super interested in, but were very, very difficult. But mine was Principles of Compilers and Design, or Compiler Design. So this loops back in. So the best thing is, like, we took one course in assembly and we were like, oh man, thank God that's over. And then like a year later, they were like, hey, remember that course you took in assembly? Now you're going to create a compiler for some code and you're going to convert it into assembly. So we were talking about how assembly is just not useful for us at all.
Unless you want to create a compiler, which, again, the pioneers of old.
They already exist. Compilers already exist.
We'll just bow down to them and use what they have already made.
We're past compiled languages. Like, now they have interpreters that are made out of compiled languages. So that's like 2 layers deep of stuff that I just did not care about at all. And this was probably the most brutal course, one of the most brutal courses we took. We had a few humdingers. Few rough times.
Well,
in
okay,
college.
and I think we should distinguish between there are courses where the content was fine, but the way the content was taught was fine, but the content itself is not very helpful to what we do at our current job.
Yes, and that's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
those courses.
And then because the program that we took at GCU was also the first time the program was taught at the school.
Yes.
There are other courses where, our thoughts about the courses are probably tainted by just the unpreparedness of a few of the projects or whatnot. But so we were basically the guinea pigs through the GCU system.
Experiments.
We could talk about that in another video at some point, maybe. Just like
that would be hilarious.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you got to do it on your own.
Slap a like on this comment or this video if you'd like to see. If you'd like us to get all the old...
Slap a like on this comment.
slap a like down there.
I'll be making a comment at some point and slap a like on it.
Slap a like on it. But if you want us to get all the old GCU computer science guys together and have us talk...
them.
Have us interview them about our college experience.
We don't want to dump too hard. Okay?
Well, we got our bachelors.
But we can.
We could.
But,
yes, we could.
But again, it was the first year that it was taught, so we kind of took that, in stride and tried to help them. The program now I've heard is completely different, and they took a lot of the feedback that we gave, that we gave, and they, I think, did a good job of trying to change things for the better. So, which is good. But back to your compilers. So yeah, we had to make
a legitimate compiler.
Yeah, to make a compiler. So
and did we have to write a language? Or did we have it compile C?
I think it was...
Because isn't this where we learned all the grammar
Oh,
stuff?
you're right. Did we have to make a language?
We
I don't
wrote-
think we had to make a language. I think we were.
We at least had to write the grammar thing and then the tree.
Well, it was the syntactic analysis of the language,
Yeah.
and then the parser, and then the compiler. I think was the order.
Yeah.
And all of those things just got harder and harder.
Because you were just building off of it. Because it started as you had to make your syntactic analysis tree or something. Or you had to make your grammar rules, then your syntactic analysis tree. Then you had to make your parser to parse based on your syntactic analysis
The
tree.
parser is what broke more than half of the class.
Like, and when we say broke, we mean emotionally and mentally. Yeah,
Spiritually.
it was rough. We there were some all-nighters involved. Many. There was a lot of caffeine involved. There was a lot of not sleeping involved in that year
A
specifically.
lot of tears.
There were a lot of tears and anger, broken phones. Yeah. Punched walls.
So yeah, I sense a trend here, and it's if we have to remake a thing that has already been made, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, will we ever? And there might be like I'm sure there's jobs out there that you like need to build a custom compiler for something for like another language that like for a.
If you're working for like a
Private-
language, like a company
That's true. The companies that actually do
that
this stuff.
create languages, new languages.
Yeah, or maintain them.
Or if you were
manage them,
ever
or
just
update
like, hey,
Python, yeah,
I want all of these people to use this language that I wrote, so I'm going to make it really good. You should probably learn this stuff.
yeah, that's true. But most jobs, all that stuff is taken for granted, and you just use what's out there.
I think this is exactly quoting my boss is like never recreate the wheel. Somebody has done it and
Yeah.
you should learn from them instead of trying to recreate something that already exists.
Yeah, and the odds are you're not making something better than Python. So just
Yeah.
use Python. It depends on what you do, but yeah. So that was Were there any last notes here that we wanted to?
No, I'm excited
Sure.
for the next episode where we get more into our favorite experiences in college, less into the tech.
Just more of a
part,
personal,
just
like
more
an
of the
opinion,
personal
what we
stuff.
hated and what we loved.
So stay tuned for that. It's not going to be filmed today with us changing shirts. So
All right. Thanks again for watching this current episode.
if you even did, if there's anybody watching, thanks.
How dare you speak over me?
I'm stopping your outro because I
was in the middle of
wanna
the
do
outro.
it. I want to do it.
I was in the middle of the outro.
Thanks
well, then
for
do it.
thanks for watching. Please eviscerate us down in the comments. We're the worst. The ends of our
Goodbye.
podcasts are just terrible.